We know what purna means because we've been speaking about, the Puranas comes from the root word purnam. And purna means complete. So Purusham Purna means the complete Purusha, Krishna. So where's Radharani in that picture? He says she's implied. And he uses this example, just like if you say, 2 nights ago we saw the full moon. You don't say, oh, and by the way, I also saw the moonshine, the effulgence around the moon. It's implied if you see the full moon. You also see the effulgence around the moon. You don't have to say it. It's implied. It's implicit. Purusham Purnam. Vyasadeva saw Radha and Krishna. And for that matter, Radha and Krishna aren't alone. They're in the spiritual world. He saw the spiritual world. Just in that little, Purusham Purnam. He's Govardhan Hill and River Jamuna and cows and kalpavriksha trees and peacocks. He said the whole thing. Saw the whole thing. Purusham Purnam. Just unpack it. He saw the whole thing. Goloka Vrindavan ki jai. Purusham Purnam. The Lord's form, the Lord's abode, the Lord's associates, everything. Radharani, Purusham Purnam. Just compact. So, in Vyasadev's, this little box over here on the left, Vyasadev's commentary on the Upanishads in the form of Vedanta Sutra. Why the Upanishads? Because it's the philosophical portion. Over here, there's 4 boxes. And at the bottom is the Upanishads. That explains these guys. And these guys say, how you do a yajna. And this says, that's what the yajna is about. What's the yajna about? Finding Brahman, finding the absolute truth. So, when Brahman is used, it implies Bhagavan. So that's consistently, with some exception, Prabhupada, when speaking of the 6 darshans, and there aren't exceptions with both Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta, Vyasadeva is one of the 6 darshans. So when Jiva Goswami went to Benares to study the 6 darshans, he learned Vedanta Sutra, but he learned it from Madhusudana Vachaspati, who was a Gaudiya Vaishnava, or he was a student of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, so he understood. But the Gaudiya understanding, but he also understood the other one, because before Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a devotee of Lord Chaitanya, what was he? He was a Mayavadi. He was up there. He had thousands of Mayavad sannyasi students and disciples. And he was teaching them, all that stuff. For 7 days, explaining Vedanta Sutra. 7 days explaining Vedanta Sutra to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it wasn't, Lord Chaitanya's teachings. It was his, this other thing. So Shankaracharya knew both. Madhusudana Vachaspati knew both because he was a student of. And to know one, it's helpful to know what the one isn't. That's kind of what Jiva Goswami is doing. The Purva Paksha fellow is saying what, the right understanding isn't. And then you say the right understanding, the wrong understanding, and you say why it isn't the right understanding. It's inclusive and exclusive. That's like thorough. That's Jiva Goswami, systematic and comprehensive. So now there's 5 more, and it's I'm going to need my reading glasses. I'm going to read to you two things. There's many quotes, but time isn't going to permit the many quotes, and it's not Tattva Sandarbha exactly, but it's from our discussion yesterday. So, sometimes, instead of Vyasadev's teaching, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would include Ashtavakra as number 6. I'll read. This is from Bhagavatam 117, purport. Besides Vyasadeva, there are other sages who authored 6 different philosophical systems. Namely, everybody's named except Vyasa, and the 6th one is Ashtavakra. Theism is explained completely in Vedanta Sutra, whereas in the other systems of philosophical speculations, practically no mention is given to the ultimate cause of all causes, and thus atheistic. Like one of them, one of those boxes is Vaisheshika or Kannada, and their doctrine is the same thing as modern science, or say it the other way. Modern science has borrowed from Vaisheshika and Kannada, and what is everything? Everything is atoms. The basis of everything is atoms. What's spiritual? We don't. Who can say what spiritual is? There's atoms, and combinations of atoms makes everything. Mechanistic science. There's only one thing. There's matter. The basis of them is the smallest particle, divisible particle of matter, atoms, and laws that govern them. And there isn't anything else. What's life? It's a combination of atoms. Matter combining according to the laws of nature. Where did it all come from? It came from atoms. What's the source of everything? Don't give us this, God is the source of everything business. All there is atoms. All there is material nature. That's it. There isn't a second thing. Prove me wrong. Where's the falsifiability? Prove me wrong. Right? That's the program. That's what they do. Okay. Now, otherwise, right in the same first canto, chapter 17, Prabhupada deletes Ashtavakra. And Ashtavakra, by the way, had a teaching very similar to Shankaracharya, or conversely. Shankaracharya's teaching is very similar to Ashtavakra's teaching, which is a philosophized Brahman, which means really Brahman isn't there. It's more Buddhism, voidism, philosophized Brahman, not real substance Brahman. Anyway, 117.18 purport, Ashtavakra disappears from the list and Vyasadeva appears on the list of 6, just like our chart here. And then again in Chaitanya Charitamrita, etc. Now, here's another reference from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25, verse 56. I'll circulate this at the end along with the PowerPoints. You don't need to take notes if you don't want to. Here's the 6. Prabhupada breaks them down. Number 1. Well, the last one he places is Vedanta, Vyas. Mimamsaka. So in that chart, it's Jaimini. And what the chart says is that Jaimini is known for hermeneutics. What's hermeneutics? For the 4th time. Hermeneutics is interpreting scriptural texts, What are rules for what you accept as a scriptural evidence? How you interpret them. The application that we spoke about was when a person like Srila Prabhupada or others who are a Vaidushika Pratyaksha person, they can see transcendence. When they speak about matter, is that also to be considered scripture? Shabda Praman or not? I know what my conviction is, but hermeneutics looks at that and says, how do you place a statement like that? Is it the same as, Narayana said? Or Krishna says, and it's in the Shrutis, or it's in the Shrutis and Smritis. Is it the same, or is it not the same? That's hermeneutics. And Jaimini did that. And somehow, in the course of Jaimini's doing what he did, the absolute truth disappeared. Here's Prabhupada's writing. The Mimamsaka philosophers, following the principles of Jaimini, now it may be his followers pulled this interesting idea together, but in any case, they stress fruitive activity, karma, exactly what Krishna spoke to his father, which means it was present at Krishna's time, because he spoke it. Karma Mimamsa philosophy. What is that? If there is a God, he must be under the laws of fruitive activity. Karma rules, and God is subordinate to the law of karma. Oh, God or not God? It may be just karma rules, or maybe there's a God that measures out and gives people their karma. Either way you want to look at it, karma rules. What's supreme karma? Do good work, everything's nice. Don't do good work, you got to have a problem. You don't want problems? Do good work. That's it. Not so dissimilar from what we heard Jiva Goswami said that Buddhists say. Just, what is truth? Truth is right action in all spheres of life, gross and subtle, time and space, consistently performed. That's truth. Just do good work. Just do good work. That's truth. Not so dissimilar. Notice that God isn't in the picture in Karma Mimamsa philosophy. And that's exactly what Krishna said to his father. You don't need to worship Indra. You need to worship. But if you want to worship, Govardhan Hill, let's go worship Govardhan Hill. So, if one strictly follows moral principles, one will be recognized by the Lord, who will give the desired reward. Such philosophers do not accept the Vedic principle of bhakti yoga. The means to achieve, it's gone, the goal is gone, just do good work. Instead, they stress following one's prescribed duty. So that's a doctrine, that's a darshan, it's one of those 6. 2, atheistic Sankhya philosophers like Kapila. He's in the far right corner over there. Atheistic Kapila analyze the material elements very scrutinizingly and thereby come to the conclusion that material nature is the cause of everything. It's, close to not the same as this Vaisheshika model. The Vaisheshika model is the atoms. Here it's more, nature and the laws of nature. They do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the cause of all causes. Sounds familiar. Nyaya, that's another one of the boxes that's in this chart. Which one is it? It's number 3, Nyaya, which deals with epistemology. We've been hearing that term during this seminar. Epistemology is an English word for pramana, which means the means of knowing something. So Nyaya has rules. of logic, because their idea, or Gautama's idea, was if you want to approach the Vedas, that column on the left, how do you access it? By Nyaya, by logic. Now Vyasa says, no, Tarka apratishta. There's no foundation or basis. There was nothing conclusive about Nyaya, because someone with stronger logic come along and break down the previous guy's logic and then put up another one and put his arms across his chest and say, prove me wrong. Falsifiability, please. Can't do it? It stands. Nyaya. Based on, of course, we make the rules of logic. So, that was his contribution to atheism. And, by logic, you can't conclude there must be God, so it's just logic. You go to the Vedas and you get philosophy of knowledge, including logic. That's what it says in box number 3. Here's Prabhupada. Nyaya philosophers like Gautama and Kannada, of course it's a little mixed up here because Kannada goes over there under Vaisheshika. But anyway, here in this list, this is Chaitanya Charitamrita, by the way. Here Prabhupada includes Ashtavakra. Mayavad philosophies say everything is an illusion. We know the aphorism, Brahman Satya, Jagat Mithya. It's false. What is this? It doesn't exist. Really? Yeah, it appears to exist, but it's false. Then Prabhupada would say, okay, it's false, then let me have all your money. Well, wait a minute here. Well, wait, you said it's false. You don't live by your philosophy, my dear sir. You're attached. Anyway, Ashtavakra and, our friend Shankaracharya. Everything is illusion except for one thing, Brahman. They stress impersonal Brahman effulgence as the cause of everything. No, interesting is Shankaracharya, this comes in the Prameya section, by the way, part 2 of Tattva Sandarbha. Shankaracharya followed Buddha chronologically or historically. Buddha rejected the Vedas. Shankaracharya accepted the Vedas. And if you accept the Vedas, you have to accept Vyasa. And if you accept Vyasa, you have to accept Vedanta Sutra. So he gave commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And in his commentary on Vedanta Sutra, he concludes something that Vyasa didn't say. That Jagat Mithya. Vyasa didn't say that. But Shankara says that he said that. And he says all kinds of things that Vyasa said he said, but he didn't say. Just like, Krishna says things in Bhagavad Gita that he didn't say. Krishna says, surrender to me. Impersonalist. Krishna doesn't mean to surrender to him. He means something else. Here's what he means. Wait a minute, that's cheating. Five, philosophers following the precepts of Patanjali practice Raja Yoga. What do? They imagine a form of the Absolute within many forms. They imagine, it's interesting jugglery, they imagine a form of the Absolute Truth within many forms. So, a little anecdote. I had some very serious health problems at one time. I started taking Ayurvedic treatment from an Ayurvedic doctor in Bombay. The person who was assisting me was married, lived in Bombay, and it's like a little far away. And his wife wasn't a devotee. He was initiated devotee. And his wife wasn't. She was interested in yoga. So she was like nagging her husband. Wives sometimes do that. She nagged her husband to get her husband to take me to a yoga place, because yoga can heal me. I didn't want to go. She kept nagging. Finally, I relented, so we went. So we went to this really far away place. It was already far away. And a huge, gigantic banyan tree was where the yoga ashram was. And, so I'm in my sannyas dhoti, and they bring me in to where the yoga class is going on. And, it was set up. One man stood up. They were in a circle, and I used to have a heart problem, and I went to all these doctors, and they said, you got to have surgery, and I didn't want to have surgery, and I came here to the yoga class, and I got healed. Then he sat down. Another guy, I had a da-da-da-da-da, and they healed me. You can get healed too. It was like an advertisement. And then, the head guy wanted to, let me in on a secret. Psst, come here. So he took me over to a little folding chair was their altar, and a picture of the universal form. He said, see that? It's imaginary. The real deal is the unmanifest within that form. Got it? I didn't get into a conversation with him about it. It wasn't worth it. I said what my conviction is, based on what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the form of the Supreme is non-material. But okay. So that's those that follow Patanjali. When I was visiting in China, a number of the public programs were yoga studios, and the Chinese yoga teachers have learned yoga by visiting India, I came to find out. And, there's these pictures of Patanjali yoga. Now, I don't even know if the teacher that they learned from in India really knows what Patanjali says. It's like, it's a promotion of themselves. That's my sense. They don't. I have the sense they don't even know, because these yoga teachers, they're very happy to have us chant Hare Krishna and speak about Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Well, they have this big poster, Patanjali Yoga. But by the way, Patanjali, it's the process of self-discipline in yoga practice. It's sadhana. No, we do sadhana, but we have a goal of sadhana, and it's not impersonal. Patanjali's is impersonal. So sometimes our Gaudiya acharyas, sometimes in Prabhupada's purports, he'll refer to, from Patanjali Yoga Sutras, he says such and such. It's taking gold from a filthy place. That's what a Paramahamsa can do. Because there are principles of controlling the mind and senses that Patanjali got right. So we give him credit for something he got right. Just the application is, it's a sinkhole. Just, reality disappears into the sinkhole. That, you do the sadhana so you can go to nowhere. So that we don't accept. And by the way, Jiva Goswami, I learned this from Radhika Raman, because he extensively studied the Sandarbhas, or portions of the Sandarbhas. Consistently, Jiva Goswami's technique is he does this. He doesn't discredit people. He's not into, taking a stick and smashing people and getting into arguments. He gives credit when somebody gets something right. And he just makes this, the way that he does it is, he quotes the first few words, and then quotes the final few words that tells you where the passage begins and ends, and then says, thus it is proved. he goes on. So, something very interesting, and I'll conclude, this is like review. From Sajjanatoshini, what's that? Sajjanatoshini, we touched on it before. It's a publication that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did, or promoted, and he had his staff present questions and he would give answers. I find this very interesting. So the authority behind the following is Bhaktisiddhanta. A question: which well-known foreigners followed the 6 Indian philosophies? Those 6 at the bottom. Those are explanations of the Vedas, those 6. Some get it, one gets it, and the others 5 don't. Bhaktisiddhanta's answer: there is no doubt that philosophical literature originated in India. Remember that statement that Jiva Goswami made: all philosophies throughout all time and place in all history emanate from the Vedas. So Bhaktisiddhanta is saying similarly. Although there are many kinds of philosophies, they are grossly divided into 6 categories. Meaning grossly means there's subdivisions of those and kind of a mixing of this one and that one. But generally speaking, 6. These 6 categories of philosophy are known in India as Sat Darshana. These 6 philosophies are also widely respected in Greece. Bhaktisiddhanta says, through intensive research, Garbe, who is a professor in Greece, has recently ascertained that Aristotle was a disciple of Gautama's philosophy of Nyaya. Thales was the disciple of Kanada's philosophy of Vaisheshika. All 6 of them. Socrates, I guess that's Socrates. Socrates was the disciple of Jaimin's Mimamsa. Pluto, I think that's Plato, was the disciple of Vyasadev's Vedanta. Pythagoras, geometry, but he didn't just do geometry, he did all kinds of stuff. He was a philosopher. Geometry was something over on the side. Pythagoras was the disciple of Kapila's Sankhya. Not just their ideas are similar, he was a disciple. And Zeno, Z-I-N-O, was the disciple of Patanjali's yoga. Interesting. But for that matter, as going back to something Prabhupada said, there's no new philosophy. It's in these 6, and somebody takes something from those 6, or mixes and matches them and comes up with, I got a new philosophy. Okay, there's more, and I'll circulate all of this. Again, Bhakti said, Jaimini rejected devotional service, which is the purport of the Vedas. He was put in charge of Samaveda. What happened to him? He must have gotten in some bad association or something. Okay. So after class, you can come and ask me the question you were asking last night, because I couldn't understand the question. I don't want to take up more time just now. But for the purpose of Tattva Sandarbha, those 6 at the bottom are points of reference of Mr. Purvapaksha, and the Purvapakshas emanate from them, and Jiva Goswami in Tattva Sandarbha, he doesn't state the Purvapaksha. Sometimes he does, and sometimes they're unstated, and he's addressing them. the silent observer critic is saying things. He knows what they're saying, even they're whispering, and then he addresses it to firmly establish on the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam, or the authority of the Vedas, what Lord Chaitanya's teachings are. Okay, so that's review number 2. We haven't even started this morning's class. That's why I wanted to start at 7:30. A little review, because it's important, because it's a little subtle, but anyway, it's important for us to understand. Here's another Purvapaksha message. If we are to accept that the Puranas and Itihasas are Vedic, because if you remember from 15.2, he said, Jiva Goswami declared, it's done, it's proved. The Puranas and Itihasas are Vedic. Not only they're Vedic, they're the 5th Veda. So he did it. And why do we say 5th Veda? He did that too. So the Purvapaksha fellow speaks this one. If we are to accept that the Puranas and Itihasas are Vedic, how is it that they were spoken by a non-Brahmana? This fellow doesn't give up very easily. So, we heard yesterday, Jiva Goswami presents this understanding that even if you want to take that position, Sutta Goswami, well, the answer is it was the 5th Veda, but Sutta Goswami had the approved by Vyasadeva the privilege of reciting the Itihasas and Puranas. And they are approachable by non-Brahmanas as the holy name. The perfect fruit of the creeper of the entire Vedic Shruti, the Shrutis say, the holy name is the fruit, ripened fruit, perfect fruit. So then this wonderful quote from Skanda Purana about the holy name. And then, now, we go to the next Purvapaksha statement. Well, wait a minute. This is review. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.4.25, Sutta Goswami says, very famous verse in ISKCON, this is quoted, Shri Shudra Dvijabandhunam Trayi Na Shruti Gochara Iti Bharatam Akhyanam Kripaya Muninam Kritam. Translation, women laborers and unqualified descendants of the twice-born have no access to the Vedas. That's Prabhupada's translation. But let's look at this Sanskrit up here. It's Shruti Gochara. That's the 4 Vedas. So not everyone has access to these 4, but they do have access to 5. That's the solution or answer. And then, does he have the right? Yeah, Bharatam Akhyanam. You remember this word Akhyanam, and Gathas, and so, Upagyata. So Akhyanam, anyway, Akhyanam, Bharatam Akhyanam, that's translated by Prabhupada as he compiled Mahabharata. Iti Bharatam Akhyanam Kripaya Muninam Kritam. Kritam, he compiled, he composed. It's his work. Mahabharata is the work of Vyasa, because it had been, in its proper understanding, had been lost, so he remanifested it. And he was a contemporary of Krishna. He wrote it. He had a lot to do about Mahabharata's composition. And we're going to hear, shortly, Purusha Muni says, wow, he did the best job of, no one has ever manifested Mahabharata like Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, because he's Vishnu Tattva, he's Krishna. Okay, then the second one is in the same chapter 4 of Canto 1, text 13. Here's the Sanskrit. Shonaka says to Sutta, Maye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat, which Prabhupada has translated as, we consider you expert in all subjects except the Vedas. But the Sanskrit is chandasat. He, Sutta Goswami, was not trained in the four Vedas, specifically even the chandasat portion of the four Vedas, which is Gayatri Mantra and other Vedic mantras. He was trained in the fifth Veda, the Puranas and Itihasas, which he was placed in charge. So we recognize you as being really qualified in that section of the Vedas, not the Chandasat section of the Vedas. So then the doubting person says, if Sutta Goswami was not expert in the Vedas, yet was being requested to narrate the Puranas, how can the Puranas be part of the Vedas? And the answer is what he's already done. It's the fifth Veda. And the fifth Veda is part of the original one Veda, that box that had all the mantras in it, that Vyasadeva then separated out. And when he separated them out, he separated out the fifth Veda too, the four Vedas say. Okay, let's review. Gee whiz, it's already 25 after. I was thinking, I think I'll do it. Won't take too long. Just read these verses from, text 15. Those of you who have a book, you can open it. Otherwise, I'm just going to read 15.1 through 15.4, and that completes our review from yesterday evening. Systematic and comprehensive, right? Okay, so 15.1. The Via Samhita of the Shiva Purana paints the same picture. What's that? That the Puranas are to be understood as from the Vedas and in conjunction with the Vedas. So, quote, the great master, Vyas, condensed the four Vedas. Condensed the four Vedas. So there's a larger portion, Shalini, there's a larger portion of Yajur Veda that he extracted a condensed version from. Yajnavalkya got the more complete version, and then it went into the box. But he condensed the four Vedas and divided them into four parts. Because he separated the Vedas into parts, he is called Vedavyas. The Puranas, also the Purana, also was condensed into 400,000 verses, although even today on the planets of the demigods it contains 1 billion. Still part of 15.1 was condensed at some shiptam, was here implies by him. Vyas did it. He condensed. 15.2. The Puranas have names like Skanda and Agni, but these pertain to persons who spoke them, as do the names of Kataka, meaning the Kata Upanishad, and so on. We covered that. Otherwise, they, the Puranas, are named according to the fixed order in which they were composed. And so when we sometimes hear that the Puranas are not eternal, such statements refer only to their visible manifestation and their appearance. We covered that. Thus we have proved 15.2 in texts 13 through 15.2 that the Itihasas and Puranas are Vedic. Then 15.3, which we just reviewed. Even so, the Purvapaksha fellow saying, well, wait a minute. Even so, persons like Sutta Goswami have the privilege to speak Itihasas and Puranas, just as such persons qualify to chant the name of Sri Krishna, which is the perfect fruit of the creeper of the entire Vedic Shruti, as stated in the Prabhas Skanda Skanda Purana, this glorification of the holy name. 15.4. And as stated in the Vishnu Dharma, we covered this last night, quote, one is considered to have studied the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva once he has uttered the two syllables. Hari. Congratulations. Furthermore, the Itihasas and Puranas definitively explain the meaning of the Vedas. Your question. The Itihasas and Puranas explain definitively the meaning of the Vedas, as the Vishnu Purana confirms in such verses as this, which means there's more. Quote, on the pretext of writing Mahabharata, Srila Vyasa has revealed the meaning of the Vedas. All the Vedas have a firm foundation in the Puranas. And we heard what that means. What the firm foundation in means two things. There are parts of the Vedas that are really difficult to understand, and the Puranas and Itihasas make them easy to understand without misunderstanding. And there are portions of the Vedas presently missing, and so now we know that which is presently missing, its foundation is in the Itihasas and Puranas. Last from 15 point, that's it. Because 15.5 is in our next section, so I'm not going to read that translation. So we covered our topic, multiple times. So because it's multiple times, it helps to get it right, hopefully. And now we're going to roar on to the next section, which is, just stepping back. We're closing in on, before the day's over, we're going to finish section 2, which is, a major part of the threefold strategy of the whole Sandarbhas. What's that? Srimad Bhagavatam is the best pramana. What's the strategy again? The teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, therefore the teaching of Lord Chaitanya is the highest. The highest pramana is Srimad Bhagavatam. It's very important that the Purvapaksha fellow gets his doubts addressed. But if he still is flapping his arms, we're going to keep moving because it's important to understand what the pramana reveals, what's the prameya, which is summarized succinctly in Tattva Sandarbha and expanded elaborately in the other 5 Sandarbhas. Okay. So there's now the subsection of section 2, and that is that the Puranas have special importance because of their compiler, Vyasa. Okay, so now here's our friend again, Mr. Purvapaksha, and here's his objection. Our school of thought cannot accommodate the notion that the Itihasas and Puranas have the same source as the Vedas. You know, you've given your nice references, even the Vedas, but I'm sorry, our school just can't permit that. We're stubborn. We view the Puranas and Itihasas as Smriti scriptures written by saintly sages, intended to elucidate the meaning of the Vedas, nothing more. All right, well, to such a person, here's how we're going to respond. Even if, it's like, api chet sudaracharo, that verse from Bhagavad Gita 9:33, even if, just for argument's sake, we'll just say, all right, we don't agree with you, but all right, if you're going to say that, even if one were to include the Itihasas and Puranas among other Smriti scriptures written by saintly sages to explain the meaning of the Vedas, the Itihasas and Puranas occupy a unique place because of the eminence of their propounder, Srila Vyasadeva, an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Okay. So there's 15.5 is where it begins, and it starts with a reference in 15.5 from Padma Purana. We're going to hear this shortly, but Padma Purana is one of the Puranas. It's a Mahapurana, and it's in the mode of goodness. It's a Sattvic Purana. So Jiva Goswami states, and then quotes the Padma Purana, we understand that the Itihasas and Puranas are just two types of Shastra, among many which elucidate the meaning of the Vedas. All right. Still, these two are special on account of the special status of their promulgator. And he gives a bunch of them, but starts with Padma Purana. Even Brahma and other demigods do not know everything Dvaipayana Vyas knows. He understands everything known to anyone else, but some things he knows no one else can comprehend. So what's Brahma's position? He's the original living being. He's the first one in the material creation to be born, and he manifests the Vedas from his mouths. Bhagavatam says he first manifested in his heart and then in his mouth, because Krishna directly gave. Krishna directly gave. We heard reference earlier. Krishna directly gave. And then Brahma gave. But what Brahma gave, even Brahma doesn't understand some of the things that Krishna Dvaipayana understands. And then this section moves on to 16.1. And I'm going to read 16.1. If you have your book, you can look too. 16.1. Translation. This is an important verse. It's going to be referenced multiple times going further into the text, so listen carefully. It's the Skanda Purana reference. These other sages make use of a small collection of items they have carved out from the infinite sky of the mind of Vyas. Those other darshan folks. They take advantage of these borrowed ideas, like people pick up things discarded from someone's house. Unquote. In the same vein is this statement by Parashar Muni in Vishnu Purana, quote, "Then, during the 28th period," what's the 28th period? During the reign of Vivaswata Manu, during any Manu, there's 71 Yuga cycles, and Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas and Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appear during the 28th Yuga cycle. So, during the 28th period, the great master of my son Vyasa, divided the one Veda, singular, with its 4 divisions into 4 separate books. And just as this brilliant editor arranged into various books the entire text of the Vedas, so have other Vyasas in the past, including me. He was in the 26th Yuga cycle. He's one of these Chiranjivas. He lives for a really long time, like, spanning over many Yuga cycles. Most people can't do that. Their body gets old and wrinkled and perish. Parashas doesn't. There's a certain number of special Chiranjivas. They live for a long time. So I know what the whole program is. I did it. I did the service. You should know, O best of the Brahmanas, that in each cycle of the 4 ages, the branches of the Vedas are thus organized by a different Vyasa. But Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, know it well, is the Supreme Lord Narayana himself. Who else on earth, O Maitreya, could be the author of the Mahabharata? I mean, he didn't just condense it from 60 million to 100,000. He wrote it again, but he didn't wasn't creative writing. The eternal breathing of Lord Narayana, he tuned into the Narayana channel and manifested it. We heard this from the previous verse. He did the work of a rishi. Okay, so here's our notes from this little section, which indicate these other sages make use of small collections of ideas they have carved out from the infinite sky of the mind of Vyasa. So the infinite sky of the mind of Vyasa is significant because sky, in knowledge of the Vedas, sky is the medium for sound. Those of you that have studied Sankhya section of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, Akash, or sky, carries sound. Sound is carried through sky. And people use it all the time. Technology uses it all the time. You've got your little cell phone, and you call a number. Now, when you do that, there's a transmitter. And what does it do? It bounces off a satellite somewhere up there and bounces back. And hello, and you hear the voice. Sound is carried through ether or sky. Yes? And the whole thing of television and radio and etc. At least, the modern version of it, it's just send up a satellite that receives and then transmits back through sky. And sky is most subtle. Sky is within water and earth. But it's not the earth or the water. I mean, because I spent a lot of time in my childhood swimming. We lived by a lake. And you dive down, and I did this. I remember doing this, so I'm sharing. Take 2 rocks and go. And you can hear the sound. or there's a boat going by, and the sound goes through the water. Because sky is within the water, or there's water along with sky. It's ether that carries the sound. It's not the water or the earth. It's ether. So the sky of the mind of Vyas is the metaphor, because sky is the medium for sound which transmits knowledge. And Vyasa's mind, where are we? Okay. Whoops, what happened? Vyasa's mind, we're on the next one. Whoops. Vyasa's mind is the medium for transcendental sound. Transcendental sound. So these other sages took, something from the sky of Vyasa's mind, something that is from Vyasa's writings, the Vedas, and they come up with, gobbledygook sometimes. This means that. Not this means this. This means that. But the Vedas, the sky of Vyasa's mind, is the basis of all kinds of knowledge, material and spiritual, exactly as Jiva Goswami said in a previous verse. Now it's being stated again in different terms. In this case, it's from Skanda Purana. And now we're going on. Purusha Muni states in Vishnu Purana, know that Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas is the Supreme Lord Narayana himself. He's Vishnu Tattva, whereas others who are Vyas, like Purusha, are Jiva Tattva. We said this before. No harm in saying it again. This is the uniqueness, the speciality of the promulgator, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas. Even if you want to take the position, Mr. Purvapaksha, that the Itihas and Puranas, they're just like, sages that write something about the Vedas. Really, it's the Vedas, not with the sages that write something. If you want to take that position, you can, but please understand, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas is the same person as the source of the Vedas that you're very fond of. So, be careful. You're going to make some offenses here. Okay. Now, next is, as I promised yesterday evening, here's the reference where Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas appears. It's mentioned in Bhagavatam 12:6-49, and this is in relation to the curse of Gautama. So before we go to the curse of Gautama, we'll just cover what the Sanskrit of, I'll say it. Gautama had a benediction. The benediction was he could produce grain at will. There was a famine. He invited the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas came. They had something to eat. The famine was over. They wanted to go home. And he, stay a while longer, and it became too long. So they tricked him and said, "Oh, you've killed the cow. We can't stay here anymore. The place is contaminated." And when he realized that how they had tricked him, he cursed them. They would lose their knowledge, which means to lose knowledge, they lose their character. That's why I use this term, puffy wuffies. It means people that have intellectual acumen but don't have character. Because you have to have character to properly understand the Vedas and be humble and submit yourself to the proper line of authority. But if you're not humble, you don't do that. You go using your intellect in some other way. Getting a flashlight and looking for the sun. The sun discloses itself. Anyway. So they began losing their knowledge, and then the demigods became quite concerned. So the demigods, Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 6 says, due to the curse of Gautama, they went to Lord Vishnu and said, help. So Lord Vishnu said, I'll manifest myself. And so here's the Sanskrit that's found in that verse. Angsa angsa kalaya vibhu. Angsa angsa kalaya vibhu. Angsa, in the word for word. Of course, this isn't Prabhupada, this is his disciples. But angsa means of his plenary expansion, specifically Sankarshan. That's taken from Sridhar Swami's commentary. Of his plenary expansion, Sankarshan. And then the second, Angsa is said twice. Angsha is of the expansion of Vishnu, and Kalaya is partial expansion. And Vibhu indicates the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. Then the way it's translated in our BBT publication is the Almighty Lord. He was petitioned by Brahma, Shiva, and the demigods. The Almighty Lord, exhibiting a divine spark of a portion of his plenary portion. So it's not a jiva. He expanded himself as Vishnu Tattva. That's the meaning. Okay. So now, 16.2. And when we're done with this, we've completed our little subsection. 16.2. We're going to read. In the Skanda Purana, it's a different reference, but it's related than 16.1. Lord Narayana generated the original knowledge in this world. It stayed intact through the Krita Yuga. In Treta Yuga, it became somewhat corrupted, and in Dwapara Yuga, altogether so. When knowledge had thus gradually turned into ignorance because of Gautama Rishi's curse, still the translation, Skanda Purana, the confused demigods, headed by Brahma and Rudra, went to ask protection from Narayana, the faultless provider of shelter. That personality of Godhead, the greatest of mystics, informed them of what they needed to do, then descended to earth as the son of Purusha from the womb of Satyavati. And so Lord Hari himself restored the neglected Vedas. So, Mr. Purvapaksha, if you have this idea, well, this is just Smriti, and we don't take it so seriously because it's not the four Vedas, please consider who Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa is. So, a little subtext from this Skanda Purana quote is, and so Lord Hari himself restored the Vedas. He's Narayana himself. And the story of Gautama's curse, which is referred to in the Skanda Purana as well as Bhagavatam Canto 12, comes from the Varaha Purana. The whole narration from the Varaha Purana is indicated in Sarvasamvadani. So if you have this book, there's a translation of Sarvasamvadani in the back, and you can find what I'm about to describe. It's also in Bhanu Swami, his presentation translates Sarvasamvadani. You'll find it in either one of those two places. But here's a little summary. You've heard it now. This is fourth or fifth time. Gautama underwent severe austerities to receive a benediction from Lord Brahma, who gave him the benediction. And the benediction was he could produce food. Brahmanas came at his invitation. Famine was over. They wanted to go home. A calf fashioned out of straw was created. They placed it on the path that Gautama used to walk to the place of bathing in the dark of night, early morning. He wasn't a slouch. He got up early before the sun rose. Didn't have a digital alarm clock. He just got up. Because he's Gautama. And took his bath. On his way to take the bath, he kicked the straw calf. Oh, you killed the cow. We're leaving. Gautama cursed them. So in that Skanda Purana passage, there's this word, utsana, highlighted in big letters. Utsana. Is that? Oh, utsana. There it is. Utsana. So the translation of the word utsana, dictionary definition, several meanings: forgotten, neglected, falling apart, decaying. By his curse, the Vedas, the Brahmana's qualification to understand the Vedas deteriorated. This utsana. And so they went, the demigods invited Lord Vishnu, please help. He understood the situation. He personally came in his Vishnu Tattva expansion as Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas. That's the end of our section. And we're ready for some comments or questions. Yes. Do we have the microphone? Very good. Right up front here? Right here. The white sweater. Good. Thank you.
Guru Maharaj, can we say that these 6 darshans are actually there in Vyasadev's presentation?
They're actually there in where?
Vyasa's presentation in pure form.
Well, if we want to accept what Jiva Goswami wrote, we have to say yes.
In a pure
They're
form,
distortions of the pure thing, and they took the pure thing and distorted it and came out with gobbledygook. And how do you come up with gobbledygook? Well, you have to have the absolute truth disappear. And you put something else in the place of the absolute truth. That's the gobbledygook. You know, it's the reflection of the real thing. But it's derived from the real thing. Yes?
Thank you.
Just for clarity where we are, so we're at a point where Jiva Goswami is explaining or trying to get us to understand that the Itihasas and Puranas are really important, and perhaps even more important than the Shrutis.
Exactly.
And then we're going to progress to Srimad Bhagavatam higher than that. The highest of all of that.
Yeah. Actually, that's the next section. What he just did was, what we did this morning was, even if fellows out there say that the Itihasas and Puranas are smritis composed by sages, you know, but the very next section is what you just said. The Puranas are more important than the Vedas. They're not only Vedic, in the 5th Vedas, and even if you have this other idea that they're just smritis, well, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, as the promulgator of them, places them above anything else that's smriti. You know, sage is writing something.
So that's the next section.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You're one of those folks that's an advocate or a student, disciple of, whether you're in Greece or India or, you know, in modern science, you know, mechanistic science person. The promulgator of Itihasas and Puranas takes precedence over you, my dear sir. Whoever you may be, however many degrees you have, and however many books you write, and however many Nobel Prizes you've won, you're nobody compared to Vyasadeva. So now I have a choice. Nobody or the Supreme Personality of Godhead promulgator. You write your books, he's writing his books. I'm going to choose.
Many of the references in this and in the previous section come from the Puranas themselves. And does...
Well, he got over that.
yeah, he mentioned something earlier. Right?
Yeah. Meaning, for those folks that they poo-poo the Itihasas and Puranas, if it says it in the Vedas, then we can accept it, and otherwise, it's poo-poo. But the 4 Vedas are saying, please don't do that, because they're as Vedic as we are. They have the same Purusha, it says like over and over. Now he doesn't bother. They can still, have their arms across their chest saying we don't accept. But the train's moving.
One last question, Maharaj.
Yeah.
This Gautam Rishi Muni, is he the same as one who propounds the Nyaya logic?
Who?
Is this Gautama who cursed the
Yeah,
Brahmanas?
same.
Same person, Nyaya.
Same person.
And he's the husband of Ahalya also. Is that the same person?
From Ramayana. As far as I know, that's my understanding. It's a qualifier. Yes. You have something?
Yes, Sir Maharaj.
Okay.
So, many of the quotes that are given, for example, important quote from Vishnu Purana about how the Puranas are completing the Vedas or the Shruti section. Is there the Sanskrit also available, or they are just because
Is this the
all the-
Alaukika question
no,
again?
no. I'm asking can we also get access to the Sanskrit corresponding to the?
Sure. You have to look them up.
Okay.
I didn't put it in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
And even in the book, he just cites the passage, and that's Jiva Goswami's system. Again, it's not for you and me. His audience is scholars. He just quotes a verse here, 2 or 3 Sanskrit words here and there, and scholars know where that's from. And that's not us.
Okay.
They didn't have folio with computers, and they just had. They were amazing people.
Okay.
So, you have to look them up.
Yeah, and now I have another question. One of the Purva Paksha's points was about only Brahmanas having access to the Shrutis.
Yes, to the 4 Vedas.
And there was another point about the Pratiloma versus
Yes,
Anuloma marriage.
correct.
So in all those contexts, seems like the Brahmanas are
They're very
designated
elevated.
by birth, although according to Bhagavad Gita, we
Well,
learned that by
Yeah,
guna
but
and karma.
It's not just qualification by birth. There's Dvijabandhus, Ashvatthama, Brahmana by birth, but not by qualification. So he's got another category, a Dvijabandhu, unqualified son of a Brahmana, not qualified. And therefore he couldn't understand the Vedas. He had access to studying them, but he didn't have the qualification to understand them. So he misused them. Shringi is another example. His father was very qualified. But he was lacking character. He didn't know how to properly use this valuable thing, and so he misused it.
So my question is that when we hear that Brahmanas, only Brahmanas have access to the Shrutis, are we to understand that those who are coming down in that family and also have that qualification?
Well,
Or-
no, let's take our own ISKCON paradigm. And specifically, from the Shrutis, we receive Gayatri Mantra, Brahma Gayatri Mantra and other mantras, and it's for Brahmanas. Now, Somebody can read it in a book that's not a Brahmana, not duly initiated, and thus not twice born. And they can read it and recite it and comment on it and do all kinds of things, like scholars from Europe did. But for us in ISKCON, access to Gayatri Mantra comes from initiation, becoming twice born. And then there's preliminaries before you get twice born. That's chanting the holy name, and then first initiation, and then comes Gayatri initiation. And Gayatri Mantra chanting is not for people that are uninitiated or first initiated. It's for access to that is not by birth, but by qualification. And how to become qualified. Supposing somebody, here's a listen carefully. Supposing someone is born of mother and father that are Brahmana, mother, Brahmana, father. I had this nice discussion with somebody, it's in Austin, Texas, that was like a university grad student, saying, why do you people, say these things about Brahmanas, that in this age of Kali, everyone is born Shudra? I said, well, it's stated in scriptures, but here's why it's stated in scriptures. Because, as the answer to the following question, yes or no, and I'll give you a hint, the answer is yes. In order to be a Brahmana, you must observe samskaras. There's no question of being a Brahmana if you do not observe samskaras. A Brahmana observes samskaras. Yes. So what's the first of those samskaras? Garbhadan samskara. Ask yourself, do people who are in this modern age, who are of mother and father who are Brahmanas, do they observe Garbhadan samskara? He said, oh, I get it. They don't. And so those that don't can't consider themselves to be Brahmanas. Because to be a Brahmana, you must observe samskaras, starting with, so they do the other ones, but not that one. I mean, not universally, but Brahmanas to observe Garbhadan samskara is who does it? It's rare. And then who's the Brahmana that can perform the yajna of Garbhadan samskara? Who has the qualification to do those properly? Therefore, kalo shudra sambhavan. Now, what's the remedy for that? The Bhagavatam gives the remedy. Bhagavat Katha. And starting with the chanting of the holy name. Namadi. Anukirtanam. Beginning with the chanting of the holy, that's the Bhagavat Dharma. It qualifies people to hear properly and then receive access to the Shrutis by qualification. That was Vyasadev's brilliance. He saw, because he could look into the future and see, oh my goodness, they need something in order to qualify themselves because they're not qualified by these other processes that are necessary for a Brahmana. Okay. So over here. Just pass the mic, please. If you can, because there's somebody back there, just stand by and go ahead.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. We understand that Itihas and Puranas are part of the fifth Vedas, are part of the Vedas called fifth Vedas.
We do understand that, yes.
And so is Mahabharata.
Yes.
So my question is, like in Mahabharata we have the story of Kaurava and Pandava, and also in Puranas we have different stories of different kings.
Yeah.
And we understand that Vedas are eternal. So do we believe that the characters change in different ages? Or we have the same Kaurava versus Pandava, for example, as we have in this age?
It's the way that this is my understanding, the way that Srila Prabhupada has explained it is, the five Pandavas, they're eternal associates of Krishna, meaning wherever Krishna performs his Bhoma Leela, they're with Krishna. So they're not changing characters. It's those persons. that are with Krishna. Then other persons bear the names. They may not be the same jiva soul. This may not be the same Duryodhana jiva, but somebody that plays that function.
So in that sense, even Duryodhan is more like a post actually, and different souls can occupy that position.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And and then here's another. Details, Prabhupada, the theme remains the same, the details may slightly modify.
Okay.
There's some diversity. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. Prabhupada referred to that statement. And therefore, when Krishna performs his pastime, there's some variety, because he's the supreme enjoyer. But the theme is essentially the same. Is that all right?
Yeah, thanks, Maharaj. Second quick question. We understand we have 400,000 plus 100,000 for Puranas and Mahabharata. Do
Yeah.
you know how many verses we have in those 4 Vedas?
No. I don't know.
I'm over here on planet
Do
Earth.
I know? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
So the original for Puranas and Mahabharata, the original pool is 1 billion. From it became 400,000. Do we know what the original pool for the?
I understand what your question is. You're stating it again, and the answer is I don't know. Now, he has heard 10 billion. Okay. Huh? 10 billion. Okay. Well, were you present for our earlier classes when we went through there's 10 different pramanas?
No,
And
I think I missed.
so this is Arsha. Burijan said. Now Burijan, so he's a good authority because he's not going to say something unless he knows. You're certainly not going to put in a book unless he knows. So, on the authority of Burijan said and surrendering to me, 10 billion. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah.
Be concise, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. As actually, I have a question. Actually, Prabhuji already told that things, but
Same question?
not the same question. Little bit
Close.
different. Actually, we know that in Brahma.
Hold the microphone close to your mouth. It'll be easier to hear you.
Hello.
Ah,
Yeah. So every Brahma's age is 1,000 yuga cycle, right?
and every day of Brahma, there's
opposite.
1,000 yuga cycles, right?
Yeah, 1,000. And every yuga cycle has the Mahabharata also.
What's that?
Every yuga cycle has the Mahabharata also.
Sure, why? It's eternal. Mahabharata is eternal.
But you see that every Brahma's days, Krishna only appears once, right?
No. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna
Yes.
appears once, and the Vyasa, other than this one, 28th Yuga cycle of Vivaswata Manu, they're Jiva souls who are Shakti Vaishavatars.
Okay.
No problem. Do you see a problem?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maharaj.
Over here? Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I want to understand what is Shankaracharya's role with respect to the Vedas, because I always get
The
confused.
second rule?
No, what was his role?
What was
Ro-
Shankaracharya's role?
That's correct. With respect to Vedas,
Oh,
because sometimes we...
two things. Prabhupada speaks. Two things. One, he kept offenders in Kali Yuga far away. They had a place to hang out, Siberia Loka or something. Way far from Krishna. They huddled around this ideology that Shankara gave them. He kept them away from Krishna. That was the purpose. He bewildered the minds of the atheistic class by taking and Second, in relation to the Vedas specifically, for Krishna's purpose, he had the appearance of Lord Buddha come, who rejected the Vedas. He restored the Vedas. And then, which means he then, Shankaracharya, paved the way by restoring the Vedas for the subsequent 4 Vaishnavacharyas to take the Vedas and render them with a supreme person at the center. You know, the source of everything, the absolute truth, is the supreme person, Bhagavan. Now they had different vadas or doctrines of how that is so, but on the authority of the Vedas, unlike Shankaracharya where Bhagavan disappeared, on the authority of the Vedas, Bhagavan appeared or was revealed through their commentary. And that work, in turn, paved the way for Chaitanya, from our perspective, for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come and unite them all under his Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy and expounding the glories of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's a function that Shankaracharya performed in relation to the Vedas.
And why was Lord Buddha required to take the people away from the Vedas?
Well, it's Kali Yuga. Do you have children?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you sometimes permit your children to do something you really don't want them to do? Parents, yeah? So like that.
No, yeah.
The Supreme Lord did that because it's Kali Yuga, to advance Kali Yuga. He did that. And one of the things with, Shankaracharya bringing in Buddhism-like teachings and calling it, it's based upon the Vedas. One of the things is said, increase the population, demoniac population, by doing what he did. It accelerates Kali Yuga. But it gives people in this age that are averse to the Supreme Personality, they don't want to sarvadharmam parijajamam ekam sharanam braja. Forget it. So then they have a place to go instead of just being, degraded. They got to be sense-controlled sannyasis to be a Shankara follower. Right? Correct. And to be a Buddhist, you have to be sense-controlled. So hedonism has an antidote. So there's something for those people that don't want to surrender to Krishna, but they can then be sense-controlled and think that's spiritual. Got it?
Yes.
That's the purpose. Or a purpose.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It's certainly not the highest thing. So why did Krishna do something other? Why did Vyasadeva write the Vedas other than one thing, surrender to Krishna? And because some people aren't going to do that. That's why we come to the material world. So he gave them something so they could elevate themselves. Or the karma kanda rituals of the Vedas. Similar. To elevate out of compassion. So Buddha did what he did, and Shankara did what he did. On the order of Krishna, they did what they did. Okay. Let's get the people that haven't spoken.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you had mentioned that...
you're being very kind and speaking slowly.
Yes, Maharaj. You had mentioned that Dvayapanya Vyas is actually Lord Narayan himself.
I mentioned it because I just read the quote that it says that.
Right.
Purusha Muni says it. He's Narayana himself.
Right. But the other Vyasas are empowered jivas, and I was wondering why they aren't Lord Narayan himself as well.
Because Krishna isn't stuck. He's not a cookie cutter Lord. He can do things in different ways. And Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas came because of Gautama's curse. Now, if he wanted, he could have had a jiva empowered to do that. But he came himself. And in the other ages, apparently that curse of Gautama is not active or operative. And so he empowers a jiva to do. Is that all right?
But would that dilute the authority of the scriptures? I mean, would that dilute the authority of the scriptures if there's an empowered jiva and not Lord Narayan himself? Or it's the same thing?
I don't understand your question.
Oh, sorry, Maharaj.
Do you understand her question? Could you say it? Yeah. In the other cases, it's an empowered jiva. Would it make a difference as to the authenticity? No. Like, for example, Purusha Muni. He was a Vyas. It was authentic. But he's going, wow, the Mahabharata of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas. Out of sight. Better than one I did. Doesn't mean the one that he did wasn't authentic. It's something like Shukadeva Goswami speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, who was in the audience? We're going to hear this. Coming attractions. Vyasadeva, the father of Shukadeva, sat at his feet. His spiritual master sat at his feet. And the spiritual master of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, sat at his feet and heard him. They were going, wow. This is the best. It's not a different Srimad Bhagavatam than what Shukadeva heard from his father. And how did Vyas get it? From the instruction of Narada, who received it from Brahma, who received it from Narayana or Krishna. Not a different Bhagavatam, but when Shukadeva Goswami spoke it, wow. Similarly, when Vyasadeva presents Mahabharata, Purusha Muni is going, wow. He's Narayan himself.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything else from the ladies' side? You always have a nice question. Do you have one? No? Okay. Okay, here, and then two more and we're done.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I just want to clarify to see if my understanding is clear. Yesterday, you mentioned how Jiva Goswami, he quotes from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad.
He quotes from?
Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad to establish that Puranas and Itihasas are the fifth Veda.
Yes.
And
or that they have a Purusha source. Because the previous section is Purusha Shabda is fallible. These have a Purusha source. They're not fallible like those other sources.
And then later he quotes extensively from the Puranas themselves. Similar
That's
to
correct. What you've understood is correct.
Yamuna Jivan Prabhu said. But since the source is Apaurusheya Shabda, that is because it seems like a circular logic that you mentioned yesterday.
I'm trying to understand what your question is. Why is it circular logic?
Like we are quoting from the Puranas to establish that the Vedas, the Puranas and Itihasas are the fifth Veda.
No.
Like you mentioned yesterday.
I understand what circular reasoning is. Now I understand your question.
Sure.
Before, or in sequence, he does make some Puranic references, but the trump, or the Supreme Court message is the Vedas themselves say. So once the Vedas themselves say, and it's not just those two, I gave a whole series, Ityadi. There's many, and there's more than what we showed on the screen. The Vedas say they're Vedic, Itihasa Purana. Once that's established, not just one quote, but multiple quotes, he doesn't have to go back and, be apologetic for quoting that which is Vedic. The train is moving. It's not circular. Now, the circular part that we touched on was, well, how do we know that the four Vedas have a Purusha source? The circular is, well, they say so. Like, I'm the king of New Jersey. How do I know that you're the king of New Jersey? Well, I say so. That's circular reasoning. So one might object. The Vedas say they have a Purusha source. How do we know that they have a Purusha source? So we have these other... And there's an element of faith involved in saying they have a Purusha source. There's some people that don't have that faith and they say, ain't so. I don't accept it. And therefore, since I don't accept it, I'm looking for some other way of pramana. So I'll go to Nyaya and say, there's systems of logic where we can accept something as truth. And then there's someone that says, well, I don't accept logic because there aren't even things to be logical about. So I've got another pramana, etc. So with reason and logic, the Vedas are accepted. There's compelling reasons. Like for example, the existence of the soul. How do you prove the existence of the soul? Well, there's evidence. Empiric evidence. Although no one has seen a soul, there's empiric evidence that there is. This and that and the other thing and the other thing through, empiric evaluation, modern science, studying things, past life remembrances, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not proof. How do you prove something? Okay. You have something and then we're done. Up front.
Guru Maharaj, how do these karma mimamsa philosophers define what is good? Because
it's arbitrary.
It seems like it's highly relative.
Yeah. That's why I call them puffy wuffies. I decide what's good. Or, common sense decides what's good. But, somebody else, that's not common sense. Something else is common sense. Like, take jihad. It's good. I go to heaven. I'm doing the work of Allah. It's good. Otherwise, why would people blow themselves up? It's good. That's my conviction. It's good. Is it stated in the Quran? No. Well, it's good anyways because it's my conviction. It's good. It's quite arbitrary. The modes of nature are very active. Guna and karma are very active in this realm. So yes, it's arbitrary, karma mimamsa.
So does Jaimini admit that?
Huh?
Does Jaimini admit that?
We can admit that. Can they admit it? I don't know if they can admit it. I haven't met one of those guys. I don't know the doctrine well enough to say, what's the bottom line for them. Okay. Last question.
Maharaj, when we are talking about the Puranas and Itihasas being part of the fifth Veda, so my understanding is these are the 18 Puranas and 2 Itihasas like Mahabharata and Ramayana, or are there more to add to the list?
Are they more?
What is the complete list of Puranas and Itihasas that form the fifth Veda?
We're going to show it on the screen coming up. the Vishnu Purana, I believe, Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, one or the other, they list them coming up. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We're going to resume at 20 minutes before 11? 20, an hour and 15 minutes, so you can get back.